The Wrestle Ramble is proudly partnered with Dubby Energy. Dubby is a fast-growing energy formula designed to give you laser focus without the jitters or crash. Whether you're a gamer, content creator, or just in need of an energy boost, Dubby has you covered. Visit dubby.gg and use code WrestleRamble to save 10% off your order at checkout. A special thank you again to Dubby Energy for partnering with us here at the Wrestle Ramble. I remember watching that and that being my first exposure to wrestling outside of the WWE, and I was fucking stupid. I was like, oh yeah, this says TNA. I wonder what branch of WWE this is. I have no idea what I was thinking. Hello and welcome to the Wrestle Ramble, the podcast that discusses WCW in the year 2000. I'm your host, Angelus Walker, better known as CyberAngelusX over on YouTube, but you can call me AJ for short. Happy New Year, first episode here in 2025. Super excited to get us started, and for the first episode of the year, I didn't want to do WCW. I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to switch it up. Next episode, we'll be back at it with WCW. We'll be starting with Nitro, I believe it was. So we'll resume WCW on the next episode. But for the brand new year's episode, for this month's episode, I wanted to talk about my journey, actually, in wrestling so far. How I got into it, getting out of it, well, losing interest of it. Lost interest for a little bit, got back into it, started with training, and we're going to get into it. It's going to be probably a little bit of a shorter one, but hey, that's okay. That's okay. And I've said before that I want to have other topics that I discuss here on the podcast, so it won't always be WCW or TNA or Stardom or Lucha Underground or whatever. Sometimes it'll be me just talking about the shows that I'm going to, like both working and also just going to as a fan, the shows that's in my area, or talking about getting into wrestling, which will be the topic for today's episode. So this is going to be super exciting. I'm real happy to sit down and talk about this because I've never really talked about it. I've talked about it with some people here and there, but I've never discussed it on the podcast. And I've made mention here and there about being a cameraman for WCW for DCW, excuse me. But I'm going to talk a little bit more on that and what led to that, because that was something that I was not expecting to happen at all, and where I stand right now as far as wrestling training is concerned. So go ahead, grab those cold ones, pop one open, because Sundays are for the boys. And with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into today's episode. All right, so my journey with wrestling. Well, I have just early memories of just sitting there in front of my TV, being 4 or 5 years old, and watching The Undertaker come out on the motorcycle on SmackDown. And so that had to be about maybe 2003-ish, because Taker had the Buried Alive match with Mr. McMahon at the '03 Survivor Series, and then came back at WrestleMania 20 to face Kane. So yeah, around 2003, maybe like early to mid 2003 is when my earliest wrestling memories occur. Man, I don't even know what it was that drew me in. And I found out later at the time, my brothers, they were wrestling fans too. I have older brothers. But by the time that I was really starting to have conscious memories, they were already gone. They had left home. But apparently they had been wrestling fans too when they were kids, and they were wrestling fans in the 80s. And so, they grew up in that era. But I had never knew that at the time. So fast forwarding a little bit to 2003, when I have my memories, man, The Undertaker was the first wrestler that just caught my eye, and I was like, wow. I don't know what it is he does. I don't know what it is I'm watching, but this is the coolest thing I have ever seen. And so The Undertaker for the longest time was my favorite wrestler. And then down the line, John Cena joined that group. And so those two, those were my two, man. Those were my favorites, The Undertaker and John Cena. Just anything related to them, I was on board. You immediately had my vote. Those were my favorites. And so they were specifically what drew me to WWE, because obviously, that's really what was on at the time. That was really the only thing you had. TNA was around, but I'm pretty sure they were still doing their weekly pay-per-views at that time. And so unless you were in that audience and, you already knew about like independent wrestling and you knew about Ring of Honor or TNA or whatever, unless you already knew about that, you were watching WWE and that was just all you had. And so I remember it was about 2005. I went with my mother to this PX that was on base, on a military base. And I don't know if she thought that this TNA DVD was a WWE DVD, or if I thought it was a WWE DVD, like just because I saw it was wrestling, my mind just said, oh yeah, wrestling, that's WWE. And so I remember I got a couple of DVDs. I don't exactly remember what all of them were, but there was one that specifically does stand out from the rest, and that was TNA's 50 Greatest Moments. And I remember watching that and that being my first exposure to wrestling outside of the WWE. And I was fucking stupid. I was like, oh yeah, this says TNA. I wonder what branch of WWE this is. I have no idea what I was thinking. I remember watching that and my God, AJ Styles was on a whole other level. I don't even know like how he came up with some of the shit that he did. But man, after watching that DVD, for one, TNA became just, I don't even know. It became something special to me. But also, AJ Styles, he joined the ranks with The Undertaker and John Cena. And so those were my top three. And even still, really, to this day, they're still my top three. But man, AJ was everything from his look to his theme song. Just, he was cool. Like, he was what I wanted to be as a wrestler. Like, I loved his gear. I loved whenever he would throw his arms up, you know, the music. That, for all intents and purposes, it is a horrible fucking song. The lyrics suck ass. But after you've heard it for a little bit, it is catchy. And it kind of grows on you after a little bit. When you really think about it, a lot of wrestling themes are fucking stupid. But after you heard them enough times, you're like, okay, this is a bop. You know, I'm going with this. This is my shit right here. And that's really why most of the music that I listen to now is just wrestling theme songs. I opened a door when I was younger and started listening to wrestling themes, and that door just got kicked wide the fuck open, because to this day, I'll just be driving down the street. It's just me, ooze. Day one, it's just me, ooze. Just sitting there, just listening to Jay's song, listening to Roman's song, just AJ. Like, yo, y'all got some ballin' ass theme song. Like, I'm just saying. Judgment Day, Tessa Blanchard, wrestlers be having some bomb ass theme songs. Like, you can't deny that shit be going hard sometimes. Going back to the DVD, I loved that DVD and I watched it so many times. I don't remember much from it now because it has been a couple of years since I've seen it. Unfortunately, the disc did end up getting broken a couple years ago, and I just haven't ordered another one. I would like to, though. I would definitely like to have that back in my collection. But that TNA DVD, that played such a pivotal role in showing me wrestling that was outside of the WWE, because like I said, that company became a staple for me. And there have been points in time over the years where I have wholeheartedly preferred watching TNA over WWE, or as the Fed, as I like to refer to them. So many good matches and moments from that DVD. Toby Keith suplexing Jeff Jarrett, that was cool. Ken Shamrock winning the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. AJ Styles winning the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. The three-way match between Joe, Daniels, and AJ. That was fantastic. Elix Skipper walking the top of the cage. I really have to get that DVD again. I would really like to have that in my collection. And so that was my early introduction to wrestling. Now, I had a few other ways that I got into it. I had a few VHS tapes that I also watched, because I grew up in the era of Friday Night SmackDown on UPN. So, WWF tapes, Friday Night SmackDown on UPN, and TNA's 50 Greatest Moments. That was my introduction to wrestling. And I'm pretty sure I still remember those VHS tapes. It was SummerSlam 1999, Unforgiven 99, King of the Ring 2000, Unforgiven 2000, No Mercy 2000, and Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling. Those, and like I said, Friday Night SmackDown on UPN and TNA 50 Greatest Moments. All of that was my first introduction to wrestling, and it absolutely had me hooked. To this day, it still has me hooked. All these years later, and it never let go. It never let go. Man, WWE got me into wrestling. I don't know that I would say that WWE is what made me love wrestling. I'll get to that here in a little bit. But that was the early stages of wrestling for me. And so, as a kid, of course, if you asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would have said a professional wrestler. And I did say professional wrestler for a little bit. But it being in the early 2000s, people weren't exactly as welcoming and as nice about it. If you say, oh, I want to be a wrestler, they weren't as nice as they are now. Or if you say you want to be a wrestler, people will be like, what? That's so cool. Yeah, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. And so I will admit, I did listen to people, obviously being a kid, you're like, yeah, you're right. Why would I want to do something stupid like that? And I guess I'll just go do something else, get a real job or something like that. And I heard that before. Oh, why would you want to do that fake stuff? Go get a real job. And anybody will hear that, Obviously, it's all a matter of perspective, and there's always going to be the naysayers. There's always going to be the negative Nellies. But being a kid, I'll admit, it did get to me. It got to me, and it did make me change my mind. And eventually, I no longer wanted to be a wrestler. I still watched it, but I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. And you know what? Obviously, a kid, it's going to take a long time before you really figure out what you want to do in life. And hell, there are people that are adults and they still have no idea what they want to do in life. And that's okay. It takes time and everyone's on their own path. So eventually I didn't want to be a wrestler anymore. And I just continued on as a fan. And it stayed that way, man, for a long time. It stayed that way until 2019. Now, let me backtrack a little bit. I'm going to go to 2008. 2008, whenever SmackDown was taken off of free TV, just your basic TV. I had no other way to watch WWE. And so for a good while, I didn't have the ability to watch. I tried to keep up with it in the news and the media and other ways, but I couldn't watch the product. And then I remember in 2014, it was a couple of days after the SummerSlam pay-per-view. And I found out that Brock Lesnar had won the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. And I wanted to watch this match. I wanted to watch the whole pay-per-view. I was like, man, I feel like if I were going to get back into watching WWE, now would be the time. And I still remember this day, man. I still remember sitting there at school in my art class, downloading SummerSlam 2014 on my PlayStation Vita. I still remember it. And I remember that is the moment in time that I started to really kind of like WWE again. For a while, I was kind of upset because I couldn't watch it, but it is what it is, Coming back to it in 2014, at that point in time, that absolutely, in my mind, played a pivotal role in everything leading up to now. Because, man, I don't know what I would be doing if I just didn't have wrestling. And at that point in time, I wasn't really watching anything else because I couldn't. I didn't have internet at home, and so the only way that I could watch shows would be to download them from the internet. And as anyone can tell you who has tried to do that, it's not exactly the easiest of things to do. I believe that everything happens for a reason, and SummerSlam 2014, because obviously there were other pay-per-views that happened in 2014, but why was it this one? Why was it a pay-per-view that I specifically had an attachment to from my childhood? because I love SummerSlam from that VHS tape that I mentioned earlier. SummerSlam was one of my favorite pay-per-views, and at any chance I could get, I would want to watch a SummerSlam. And so I downloaded SummerSlam, went home, watched it, and from 2014 up until probably 2017, that was how I watched WWE, and that's how I watched TNA, because I also started to find TNA shows. I started to watch Lucha Underground in 2015. That was one of my favorite. Absolutely love Lucha Underground. That, man, I wish that would come back in some shape, or at least make it a little bit easier to find the episodes online, because I have not really had too much luck. God, there was so much wrestling at that point in time. I watched online shows like Defiant Wrestling, or WCPW, what it was originally called. TNA, I remember in 2015, I was watching pretty much every TNA show and barely watching the WWE. TNA in 2015 is really when I started to lean forward a little bit and just be like, okay, I haven't seen y'all since I was a kid. And every now and again, whenever I would go to my sister's whenever I was younger, because she had cable for a little bit, if I was there on a Thursday or something, I would try to watch TNA. And I don't remember too much from that era, which is why I would really like to go back to that era and discuss that here on the podcast. And that's really the purpose of the podcast, just sit and discuss some of my favorite eras in wrestling, or the eras that I might not necessarily have gotten to watch much of when I was younger. And so I would try to watch TNA whenever I would go to her place. As I said, I don't really have too many memories from that, but I do remember trying to watch it as much as I could, and I still remember watching it a whole hell of a lot more than I did WWE, because I feel like I was low-key kind of mad that they took it off of basic TV. Because, man, y'all already had Raw on cable, and now you want to add SmackDown too. I'm just a poor boy over here just trying to watch some wrestling, and y'all ain't doing me no favors. Help a feller out. Help me out a little bit. I'm sorry. I'm also going all over the place with the timeline. I'm trying to remember and reminisce as quickly and as correctly as I can. Gosh, yeah. Wrestling has always just played a pivotal role in my life, and I believe even when I was thinking of doing other things, ultimately I was just going to come back to wrestling. So I was downloading my shows 2014 up until about 2017-ish. And then I started to find other ways to watch the shows online, live. 2018, I remember starting making content on YouTube, and I remember wanting to start a universe mode because, for one, I had been thoroughly entertained by Delzinski's SNME, and then Murph's YT13, his universe mode. Those two guys, man, they played a big inspirational factor in me, not only creating a YouTube channel, but starting with universe mode. And if you didn't know, a couple years ago, I actually got my start on YouTube in 2018 with universe mode and NXT, and that was really my first exposure to content creativity. And it has opened such a door that I didn't even realize existed. Like, I absolutely love content creation, and just everything that I do, everything that I have done, and all of the plans that I have for the future. Like, man, I never thought that I would want to do content creativity as much as I do. And it all goes back to wrestling. And because I want to do wrestling content too. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do aside from the podcast, but I want to do, like, actual full-fledged YouTube videos. I'm not sure if I'm going to do like behind the scenes stuff or anything like that, but everything is a work in progress, and there's plenty of time to decide. And so I'm wanting to figure out what all I'm wanting to create with that. But man, it's fun to just sit and think about all the possibilities that I can have, and the things that very, very well could happen here in the near future. And it's really exciting. But I started with, I remember not having a single clue about what to do as far as making content. I remember my first video that I posted, I created not really a little teaser. I really wanted it to be the intro for the show, and I didn't fully understand how copyright worked at the time. I do now, but I was like, let me just, let me take a couple of clips, throw the NXT theme, which was Rage at the time, I think. Throw that over it, and then just put coming soon at the end. And the overall clip was only about maybe 35, 45 seconds. But I remember, because I had no idea what I was going on, no idea what I was doing, no idea what was going on, this 35 to 45 second clip took me like 7 hours to make. Literally, I wish I were kidding, but I'm not. 7 hours working on it from a laptop. First time, green as you can be in an editing program. I remember downloading a cracked version of Sony Vegas Pro. Do not recommend doing that, by the way. Just don't do it. Just don't. If you want free editing software, Kdenlive. Just use Kdenlive. That's what I'm using now. Highly recommend. Yeah, I had no idea what I was doing at all with Sony Vegas. Now, obviously, as time went on, I started to get a little bit better, and I wanted to have my universe mode be a little bit different and stand out from everybody else's. So I remember wanting to do my universe mode in seasons. And I still love that idea. And I think I might stick with that for something else in the future. The entirety of NXT Season 1, which is on my first YouTube channel, Angelus. I can leave a link to that below if you guys would like that. I'm not really uploading on there now, but I am going to do something with it down the line. I'm not sure if I want that to be my wrestling exclusive channel, where I'll do like Fire Pro stuff, universe mode stuff. If I actually do the behind the scenes stuff, I might put it on that channel. I'm very much undecided. I have a lot of ideas, and I tend to just put them out on paper. And so I'm not exactly sure on the execution yet, but I'm working on it. So the entirety of NXT Season 1 was edited through Sony Vegas Pro. I remember when I decided that I was going to do a Season 2, And to this day, I still say that NXT Season 2, even though it did have its issues, out of the early stages of Season 1, the few episodes of Season 3 that I did, Season 2 had some of my best commentary work, I feel, and some of my best editing work, because I believe that the Kevin Owens versus Ricochet match that I did from NXT TakeOver New York, I think it was, I still think that had some of my best edits in that match. I had a lot of fun with that, but I was really working with underpowered equipment at that time, and so I had just a myriad of issues, everything from my screen just not recording, to sometimes the footage being messed up. I would get a really good match only to find out that I couldn't use a good portion of the footage because it had messed up. It was just frustrating. It was really just frustrating, and I didn't have much money at the time, and so my resources were really limited. I still don't have much money, but I have a little bit better equipment than I did a couple years ago. But Universe Mode played such a pivotal role in not only my love of wrestling, but also my love of content creativity, because I absolutely love making stuff for YouTube. I love just sitting in the editing program and going from zero to a full completed project and just seeing how everything turns out. I love working with the editing software, just everything about it. I love content creativity. And even though my uploads are here and there for the most part, it is something that I'm going to be doing for the next couple of years to come. And as I get a little bit more free time, I'm just going to keep coming back and doing more, because I got games to finish, man. I got series to finish. Y'all thought I forgot about that Grand Theft Auto 3, didn't you? Yeah, you thought I forgot. No, I ain't forget. I'm coming back to Liberty City. You know, I got some shit to wreck, alright? I didn't forget about SpongeBob either. You know, we're going to have to battle for Bikini Bottom rehydrated style, if you know what I mean, and you know what I'm saying. I got games to finish, man. And it's also just fun to sit there and record and just see what the hell happens with a game. And because sometimes some really cool stuff happens, and it's real annoying whenever I don't get it caught on camera. But I'm starting to record my games a little bit more, but yeah, you know, I'm gonna need a little bit more storage space before I can do any kind of hefty work with that. But that's a topic for another time. Universe Mode was so much fun in the beginning for me, and then it wasn't. And at the time, WWE wasn't great. I was also watching a bunch of other companies and also doing a Universe Mode. To be honest, I burnt myself out. I burnt myself out for a good while. And so for a couple of months in 2019, I just did not watch wrestling. I think for probably the first 3.5 months of 2019, I didn't watch any wrestling. And fast forward to April 2019, I'm watching James's content, Pulse, if you guys know him from Deadlock, which I'm sure you do, one of the founders of DPW, and it is very much a goal of mine to wrestle in DPW. That would be a dream come true. One day I was just watching his content, and he was talking about this company that he had recently started watching. and he said it was named Stardom, and just the way that he would talk about it and the excitement that you would hear in his voice and the excitement you would see on his face, you'd just be like, oh man, this got to be some real good wrestling. Like he's really excited to talk about this, and he's trying to get other people to watch it. So I find a couple videos online. Immediately becomes one of my favorite promotions. And eventually I got Stardom World, and it was off to the races from there. Stardom became one of my favorite promotions, and it still is one of my favorite promotions to this day. I remember spending so much time in 2019 watching Stardom matches, like just catching up on the backlog. And TCS was my group. I love that group. I loved Stardom, everything about it. It was just something fresh. It was something new, something I hadn't seen before, and it immediately drew my attention. So I'm watching Stardom for a good while in 2019, and towards the end of the summer, I start to give WWE a try again. They were hot ass, let me tell you. I was not having any of it. Like, I was not entertained in the slightest bit. And then I remember Hell in the Cell 2019. After that match with The Fiend and Seth Rollins and Sasha Banks, I forgot who she fought earlier that night, but after that show, I was like, all right, that's enough for me, dog. I'm gonna head out. I've had enough. I have had enough of this shit forever. And so from Hell in the Cell 2019 up until I think maybe SummerSlam 2022, I didn't watch WWE. I didn't really keep up with it. I would see some clips here and there. I would listen to the Deadlock podcast, and at the time they were reviewing the pay-per-views. And so that was really the only way that I was keeping up with it. And I remember when they stopped doing that and they started talking about AEW. For one, I was also watching AEW in 2019. I watched that for a good while. That first year was fan-fucking-tastic. That was absolutely fire, bro. And I have got to talk about that at some point in time on the podcast. But yeah, that first year, they were on a roll. I had fun watching it. And then the pandemic happened in 2020, and I didn't really watch AEW from there. I didn't really watch wrestling in general whenever the pandemic first happened. And specifically, I didn't watch because March 2020, I leave home, and for one, if you guys didn't know, I'm in North Carolina. March 2020, I leave home, and I go to Greensboro to train. I go to the Firestar Academy, and at the time, it was not where it is now. I don't remember exactly what the street name was, but it was the place that they were at right before they moved from this last place that they were at. The name's gonna come to me later, but I'm absolutely drunk blank on it right now. It was the original Firestar Training Center. So I leave home, I go to Greensboro to train, and I only have enough money for the first class. So I do the first class. I almost pass out while going through training for the first time. I almost throw up, but I make it. I hold on, and I remember there was nowhere for me to stay. And so I had a few extra bucks. And so I remember walking probably like 2 miles to just this motel, finally coming across somewhere I could stay. And I went there and I was like, I'm going to figure this out tomorrow. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I remember my brother being really concerned about me. He was like, you can just stay with me, right? And I told him, like, no, I have to at least go to Greensboro and try. I don't know what's going to happen, but I can't stay at home anymore. And there's something for me that's outside of home, and it's not here in my hometown. Like, I have to go outside of here. And so next morning comes, I have no idea what I'm going to do. My brother asked me what I'm going to do. He asked me if I've eaten, and I tell him no. Dude, I'm just going through the wind, going through the motions right now. He sends me a couple bucks. He tells me to go get something to eat. I tell him I'm going to head to this McDonald's that's right down the way. And I go there, and he says that he's called me an Uber to take me to the train station, and it's going to bring me to Raleigh, where I'll stay with him for a little bit until I can get things on track. I owe a lot to my brother. I don't know if I would be where I am now if he never made that call for me to come and stay with him in Raleigh. And I don't know if I've ever told him how appreciative I was of what he did for me. So if y'all are listening, appreciate you, bro. Love you, Aaron. You're the best brother I could have asked for. So I get my life together. Next couple of months, I'm just trying to get my own place. I came down here. I only had a state ID. I didn't have a driver's license. I had nothing. So I'm just trying to get my life together, get a place of my own. And so I just stacked my money for the next 4 months. Stacked my money, finally got a place of my own. And from there, it was just like, okay, I need to start getting my adult life in order. I have to get an actual ID, I have to get a driver's license. I need a car. I have all this other stuff that I have to do. I have to finish getting the rest of my stuff from our mother's place. And it was just so much. So pretty much the rest of 2020 was just me trying to get my life in order. 2020 and a good portion of 2021 was just me getting my life together and trying to survive the pandemic. I remember 2020. I remember I stopped watching Stardom after I found out that Hana Kimura passed away. And I didn't stop watching the company for any reason related to anyone. It was because Hana Kimura was one of the first people that drew me into Stardom. First off, she's an incredibly beautiful woman. Let's just get that out of the way. But just her character, the charisma that she had, the jokes that she was one of the funniest people on that roster. Like, I loved her promos, especially with Mayu Iwatani. She had so many great matches and great promos. Her and Konami, along with Jungle Kiona, that, like I said, they were just my favorites in Stardom. I absolutely love TCS, and I wanted to get a shirt of theirs, but I never had the opportunity to. I stopped watching because, truthfully, it kind of hurt to watch. It kind of hurt to watch, to know that she wasn't there, and it felt weird watching and knowing that she wasn't going to be there. And so, God, yeah, man, I think that probably still plays a little bit of a factor as to why I don't watch Stardom as much now. Over the past couple of years, I have watched it here and there, but I don't watch it anywhere near as much as I used to. And that is going to change one day. I am going to get back to it, and I would like to watch it pretty regularly. And I'm pretty sure I saw earlier this morning that Saya Kamitani won the World of Stardom Championship. So if that is the case, congratulations, Saya. You're a little bit different from the last time I saw you. The last time I saw you, you were still doing the dancing gimmick, and you were not really executing that running shooting star press. But congratulations. I'm sure that she has vastly improved since the last time I saw her, and so I might check that out here soon. I'm not entirely sure. I definitely would like to get back into Stardom. It just, for a good while, it felt weird to watch it. And I think it may have been like 2021 whenever I watched it, but I don't think I've watched it since. But it is something that I am going to cover here on the podcast. I would love to talk about Stardom and just get that in front of as many people as I can, because I absolutely just want all the best for them. And if I can go back to 2019 for a second, whenever I first got into Stardom is really what reinvigorated my love of professional wrestling. And really, Stardom is what made me love wrestling. Seeing how hard everyone on that roster worked, how they would just go out there and give it their all in front of just a handful of people. And Stardom is much bigger now from whenever I started watching it. Just seeing how much they went out there and they put forth, and how the crowd just drew to them and just wanted them to succeed, it made me love wrestling. It made me love wrestling again, and it made me want to do wrestling again. And so I remember late 2019 trying to find places that was in the area where I could train, and one of the first places to pop up was the Firestar Pro Wrestling Academy in Greensboro, and that's how I ended up in Greensboro in 2020. So it's funny how things work out, and it's funny how for a good while, I had my moments where I didn't really watch wrestling, didn't really care too much for it, didn't really keep up with it, but ultimately it's ultimately what kept my interests ultimately it's the one thing that has kept my interest for the longest, and it's opened doorways for me in other paths. I owe a lot to wrestling, and I haven't even really been in it like that. And I still got a little bit to talk about, but I'm going to wrap this up here real soon, I promise. Now, before we get onto our next topic, I do want to say really quickly, I would like to thank our sponsor and partner for this episode of the Wrestle Ramble, and that is Dubby Energy. Thank you, Dubby. We greatly appreciate you for partnering and sponsoring us here at the Wrestle Ramble. And if you visit w.gg and use code Wrestle Ramble, you can save 10% off your order at checkout. We greatly appreciate you, and we greatly appreciate W for partnering with us. Thank you very much. Now, back to the task at hand. Well, hold on. Let me grab a quick sip of my water real quick. A little parched. Some ice cold water. Whew. All right. So a good portion of 2021, I'm getting my life together. And then finally in September, I have enough money to train. And I remember being so nervous, so excited, and just thinking, it's finally happening. I've waited for this for so long, and it's finally happening. So I start to train pretty regularly for a couple of weeks. Fast forward a little bit. I take a hip toss from a guy while we're in training one day. Pretty big dude, probably about 6'5", 6'6". I take a hip toss wrong, and it kind of jerks my neck forward. And so I remember not being able to move my neck for a little bit. And I remember wanting to take just about a week or so off from training, just because I didn't want to potentially screw anything up and not even have a career before it could begin. So I took a little bit of time, and right as I was almost completely healed, I end up getting in a car accident. I get in a car accident, and it's because somebody's teenage daughter, on her phone, not paying attention, she rear-ended me, and for one, that screwed up my car, and so it pretty much didn't run after that. And then, as I said, also, it kind of re-injured my neck. And so I wasn't in a good spot. Fast forward to around Halloween. It's Firestar Pro Wrestling presents Fight of the Living Dead. And this is not only my first wrestling show that I'm gonna attend live in person. I asked if I could maybe help out and do something out at the show. And turns out I'm the timekeeper for the event. And so I don't think I'll ever be able to fully express the gratitude that I have for LeBron Cozone, because throughout my entire time while I've been trying to get into wrestling, he's just been as great as anyone can be. And I know that he's been spoken of highly in the wrestling world, specifically in North Carolina scene. And he deserves it. He absolutely deserves it. He is one of the most selfless and hardest working people that I've seen and I have the pleasure of knowing. And I hope he knows how grateful I am for everything that he has done for me. Yeah, I might not be able to train for the ring right now, but he still lets me come out to shows every now and again. He still sends me the invitations, and you gotta send me the invitations for the shows that's not on Thursday, man. I gotta work the next day. I gotta get up at 5 o'clock. I'm not trying to be in Greensboro. First off, I get off late in the afternoon, and so I would pretty much have to leave from work, go to the show, be at the show from 5, 6, however long until it's over. And so, we're going to have to break stuff down if we're somewhere else or do whatever. Come back, get back around 11, 12, probably not even 11, probably more like 12-ish, maybe. And then have to get up at 5 and go to work on Friday. It's a little bit much. I don't mind coming to the weekend shows. The Thursday shows, I gotta be at work the next day, man. I gotta be at work. But I really hope he knows that he's such an important person, not only to me, but to a lot of people, not only here in the North Carolina area, but a lot of people in this generation of wrestling. And nobody deserves more than him to be the DPW national champion right now. And so congratulations to him, man. You are absolutely killing it. And I hope to one day mix it up with you in the ring. Like that's going to be a real fun time. I think we could do something really great and really special. And I'm looking forward to it. So that was my first time going to a live wrestling show. First time working at a wrestling show, and that couldn't have been a better first time experience. I still have the pictures saved in my phone. I have the videos saved. That was such a special show for me. And I have the poster hanging up on my wall in my office, actually. That was such a great experience, and I hold it in such a special place in my heart, and I couldn't have asked for it to go any better than it did. I had a little bit of money. I was an Amazon driver, and I had been a driver for a little bit. I started that summer, and the original subsidiary that I was with ended up shutting down, and so I had to jump to another one. And I was with this specific subsidiary from sometime in October up until my departure in December. Now, why did I leave, you may ask? Well, I had an allergic reaction on the road. I informed my dispatcher about it, and they asked me if I could still deliver the packages. I told them that I was on my way to get a Benadryl because I didn't know that I had a food allergy at the time. I was on my way to get a Benadryl, and so stopped off at the Dollar General, grabbed that. After a little bit, it still wasn't helping, and so I told them that I was going to go to the urgent care. So I find an urgent care that's about 10 minutes away. Head there, inform them about what's going on. Well, I find out that my supervisor had shown up to the urgent care, never came inside. He took the packages that was in my van, took those out. I had a few items that was still in there, left those in there. He locked the van, and he left me at the urgent care. And when I asked him, why didn't he come in? Why didn't he ask about me? Why didn't he do anything? He was like, oh, well, I didn't know how long you were going to be there. Here's a fun fact for you. About 20 minutes after he left, I left. So literally all he had to do was just stand there for less than half an hour, and we could have just left together. But that did not happen. So what happens afterwards? Well, the nurses tell me that he's gone, and they say that they're going to order a lift for me. Now, I want you to keep in mind, I'm about 40 minutes or so away from our warehouse, and we couldn't even go to our warehouse at the time because we, for whatever reason, had to park our vans near the airport. So, with the vans being near the airport, my car was at the airport. Well, I didn't even have my car because I was having car troubles at the time because I had just gotten a new car, only to then find out that it was having engine troubles. So, at that time, I was having a whole engine replaced. I didn't have a car. I had to use my girlfriend's car, and so it was just parked at the airport. And so she couldn't come get me because I had the only car. So they call me a lift. The lift takes me back there. I get into the car. I go home. I quit on Monday. That happened on a Friday. I quit that Monday. I go in just to tell them I'm quitting. Fuck you. And when I tell the supervisor that I'm quitting, he's like, oh, well, I thought we handled it as best as we could. Did you? Because I could think of a couple of different ways that could have been handled a little bit better, and it does not involve the way that you handled it. But okay, let's go with that. So I had just freshly quit from my job. So for a little bit, I did not have money. I mean, pretty much that entire month, I didn't really have money. Fast forward, I get a new job in January. Probably like the third day in January, I have a new job. Well, after being at that job for about a month and a half, I realized that they are scamming me and they are taking my money. So I leave from that job. After about a week or so, I find something, just going to an advanced store, trying to find some jumper cables for my car. I see that they have a hiring sign. And so I ask them, are you still hiring by chance? And that is how I ended up being at Advance. And so I left from the other job pretty much as soon as I could. As soon as that paperwork was done for Advance, I was done. I was like, I'm out of here. I've had enough of this. And so 2022, I'm starting to get my money back on track a little bit. At this time, I'm also in school. I'm going to school to get my certification in cybersecurity. And I was a little bit depressed. I was a little bit depressed about the fact that I couldn't train. I was really down on myself. I didn't really want to watch wrestling. I didn't want to watch any local wrestling. I didn't want to watch DPW or anything because it just hurt to watch it because I couldn't do it. And so after a couple of months of being down on myself, I said, enough, man. Like, what is this getting you? Like, you're just sitting here being down in the dumps. Nothing's happening for you. What are we doing? It's been 2 years and you're not making any strides. You're not making any progress. Like, what's happening? And so I'm just sitting here and I'm like, you know what? I've had enough. I have to do something. And so I have the thought to send LeBron a message. I pretty much spill my guts out to him. I say, look, man, this is what's happening. I don't know when I'm going to be able to train in the ring, but if you have any other jobs that you need or anything you want done, if you have any other jobs that have to get done, if you have anything else that has to get done, if you just need an extra set of hands, I'm here. You don't have to pay me. You don't have to do anything. If you just need another set of hands to come out to these shows and help you until I can pay for training, I do not mind doing that. And I sent that message in 2023. And so 2023 is when I finally started to kind of break out of my shell a little bit. And I couldn't have made a better decision. It all started with that one text, just getting over my issues that I had with myself and saying I could sit here and wallow in self-pity, or I could do something. And worst case scenario, he says no, and I just continue on, save for training when I can, and I will get back there as soon as possible. Luckily for me, he agreed, and I've been going out to the shows ever since, just helping out here and there. Not so much right now because I think they've been doing Thursday shows for the most part. And as I said, I work throughout the week, and I have to get up relatively early, and so I can't always do that. You know, I might do it sometimes, but not all the time. And so it really just all came down to that one message, and I started going to a couple of shows here and there. And then one show, I was just sitting in the crowd, and the show was about to start. And LeBron walks over and he taps me, and he's like, "Hey, could you come here real quick?" And I'm just thinking that he just wants me to like sweep or just like work security or something or do whatever. This man puts me in the production booth, and he's like, "I need you to do the music and the graphics for the show." And I'm like, You want me to do what? You want me to do who? Are you sure about that? Because I'm not sure about that. Like, you think that's a good idea? Because I don't think that's a good idea at all. But sure enough, I worked the music, I worked the graphics, and that also happened to be a show that was for DPW, or at least they had a couple of matches on that show. And so I also got to work the music for that, and that just, it brings a smile to my face because I still remember just being on cloud nine and not believing that it was actually happening. And after the show was over, I went over to LeBron, and I was just about to leave, and he was standing there and he was talking to AC Divine. And LeBron, he was like, "Hey, you know, this is the guy that worked our music and everything. Like, he did everything here tonight." And AC was like, "Oh, okay, you did a great job." And he asked me what I would be doing, like a month or two later, in August. And he asked me if I would want to come out and work the show there. And so I absolutely jumped at the opportunity. Like, hell yeah, I'd love to come out and work and just do whatever I can, you know, and just try and get my feet wet and just get in there as much as I can. And so I worked like 2 shows, and it were like 2 different jobs. And it was either that second or third show, I don't really remember. AC asked if I wanted to try being a cameraman. And it was their show that they did in November of 2023, and that was my first time, and and I was like, and I made it a point to say in the message, I was like, "Look, man, if you want me to, I will absolutely. I'm kind of terrified of, I'm kind of petrified of screwing it up, but I'll give it a try. I want you to know this is my first time. I have never done this before in any capacity. So if it's not great, please don't yell at me." But yeah, he was like, "No, you'll do great. Come on out. You know, we'll pay you." It was the only time I got paid. We'll pay you. We'll get you food. It'll be great. And so I'm like, hell yeah, say the word. And I've just been working DCW since. I've been to a few Firestar shows. I've been to maybe 2, maybe 3. But mainly I've been working at DCW as a cameraman. And I worked all of their shows last year with the exception of one. That was in May, and that was DCW Standing on Business, I believe. I had a cruise booked for months, and I couldn't get a refund, couldn't get a return or anything. So I already had that planned, already had that going on, and yeah, man, that was really the only show that I didn't work last year, and I worked a show I worked the last two shows of last year, like towards the end of the year. DCW Chaos Before Christmas. It was after that show that, again, just really trying to bet on myself. I went to AC afterwards and I said, hey, if you need another guy, I've been here for a little bit. If it's cool with you, I don't mind being kind of like a permanent second camera guy. And so he said, if I want it, it's mine. And so we're going to see what this year has in store for us. It's going to be real exciting. DCW does have a pay-per-view, or I guess it is a pay-per-view. Regardless of whether it actually is a pay-per-view, I grew up in that era whenever it was pay-per-view. So I still say pay-per-views for all of the shows. So DCW has a show coming up February 9th, I want to say. Let me fact check that, actually. February 8th, February 8th, DCW presents Meltdown. And that's going to be at the Richard B. Harrison Gym in Selma, North Carolina. So we would love to have you come on out. It's family fun wrestling. Everybody can enjoy it. I've enjoyed working at this company and I'm just so grateful to them. And it has been such a great experience and really just learning how everything works and seeing how the business works. It's been such a great time. And even though it's not necessarily the path that I would have liked to take, because, if you would have asked me a couple years ago, I would have been a wrestler by now. But obviously, life tends to work the way that it wants to. So wrestling is definitely still something that I absolutely am going to do. But right now, I'm just having fun doing the camera stuff and doing some of the behind the scenes stuff and learning how everything works. And there are a couple of other jobs that I would like to do. And who knows, maybe I'll be able to work a couple of other companies. We'll never know what happens. We'll never know. You just never know. It's been quite an interesting journey, but it's been a fun and kind of terrifying journey too. But I really don't think that I would change too much about it. I think that everything that I've gone through so far has pretty much shaped and gotten me in the correct mindset. And while it is still an ongoing process, it's an exciting and just everything I could have hoped for in an experience. And I just have loved everything so far. And I can't wait to see what the new year has in store for me. I can't wait to see what my future in wrestling has in store for me. Because sooner rather than later, I'm going to be in that ring. And it's going to be a whole hell of a lot of fun. And I can't wait. And that time might come a whole hell of a lot sooner than I realize. We'll just have to wait and see. But that is going to do it for this episode of the Wrestle Ramble podcast. Thank you so much for joining me here. I greatly appreciate you and all of your stinking cute faces. If you have made it to the end, thank you so much. You really didn't have to, but I'm so super glad that you did. If you're listening to this on YouTube, please hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on those post notifications so you never miss an episode of when the Wrestle Ramble podcast goes live. Join us here at Delta 131. We would love to have you, and you can help us continue to grow and go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this episode. We will be back next time talking about WCW, and that's going to be a real good one.